start off with the first question. So has your organization been impacted by the recent changes in the U.S. regulatory environment? And if so, to what extent?
Well, I think we have in some ways, Donna, particularly with the focus on not just trade barriers, but some elements in terms of how the U.S. administration has referred to its concerns about Canada's in terms of their own fentanyl crisis. It certainly cast a bit of a spotlight on our area of focus, which is AML. And it's kind of raised the importance of AML compliance in terms of the consciousness of the public in a way that we haven't seen in what was traditionally a very niche or specialized area of regulatory compliance and financial services. So we're certainly fielding a lot more interest from all kinds of interested parties and frankly new registrants because Canada's regime has been expanding in terms of AML regulation, regardless of what the US has been doing. In the wider sense, I think we've yet to see what will happen and how Canada will react to some of the regulatory imperatives in the U.S., such as, the U.S. Treasury has suggested some changing imperatives and focus on their supervisory practices in terms of the banking space. We'll have to see with elections and changing priorities in the Canadian landscape. We'll see how that plays out here.
Yeah, I've been sort of following the changes in the digital assets in the US. What do you see any impact here in Canada on that or no?
I think there could be some in the longer term, but I mean, probably, my tentative prediction at this point is not as much, simply because the Canadian approach and the regulatory landscape for digital assets has been more stable than in the United States. In fact, it's been in some ways more permissive. Keep in mind that under the past administration, the SEC took a very hard line with digital assets, even as compared to Canada, where things like digital asset ETFs and Bitcoin ETFs were listed for trading on Canadian exchanges long before they were permitted in the United States. So the US has some way to liberalize, even to catch up with places like Canada, let alone Europe. So I don't think the impact will be as big. Although what it could do to market demand and opportunities, well, that's more of a function in terms of the trade barriers. So we'll have to see that on that as well. But for us, I think it certainly won't slow down the pace of digital asset adoption, but I don't see it supercharging Canada in any meaningful way right now, given the other priorities.
In terms of the changes and the fluidity of the environment, are you having to change your business model, your product solution at all?
I think we've certainly it's having an effect, and so far it's been, if anything, an acceleration of the areas we already focused on, such as certain elements of implementing new technology capabilities into our managed solutions and services. Some of our, for example, our outsource detection and transaction monitoring services and ways of leveraging, as most people are doing, new technologies in that regard. I think there's been the the need for advisory services that we offer is changing. Traditional areas are slowing, and other places it's accelerating in terms of the pace of change in terms of our supervisory approach in Canada. There's more demand to proactively manage emerging issues also tied to trade. Other ones, it's I think some shops are struggling. The ones who have relied on traditional services and technologies.
In terms of the regulatory environment in Canada, do you think the Canadian regulators need to rethink their approach at all?
I think they do. I think, to be perfectly blunt, they need to get on with the business of rethinking it, because ever since certainly the pandemic, we see differing regulators in both provincial and federal starting initiatives to rethink their approach to regulation, supervision, rulemaking. They seem to have stalled in many cases. OSFI, for example, launched a policy renewal initiative only to abandon it. They have yet to actually implement new, more efficient technologies for gathering information from industry. I think to answer your question directly, yes, they need to get on with the efforts they've announced because, quite frankly, they seem quite stuck
Right.
federally and provincially. And it's costing Canadians and Canadian businesses because of this uncertainty, and the costs of compliance are only going up.
Yeah, I mean, financial burden is a ongoing topic for our members since the day we started, and it continues to be.
I think a lot of it is the regulators have gotten less efficient, or at least they have not kept up with the pace of change or the pace of different things that need to be done in order to reflect changing technological needs. They're slow to adapt new systems as well as slow to adapt streamlined or changed guidance. They just can't seem to keep up. Regulation and authority have always struggled to keep up with the pace of economic change. That's more true than ever before.
Is there something that you see as an imperative in the AML space that they need to do?
Simplification. At least in terms of Canada, the playbook has been, and this is largely to satisfy the FATF and international views of Canada as a bit of a money laundering haven. Their approach has been throw more businesses into a regime which already had some serious and perhaps fatal flaws. Um, They've done that with factoring entities. They've done it with trading entities. They've done it with real estate entities. They've done it with leasing entities. Throwing more and more of those into the same old regime won't solve the problem. They need to adjust the regime so that it's effective regulation and supervision of the different kinds of businesses. And unfortunately, we've seen very, very little creative thinking from our authorities on that to date.
From a more holistic view, there are a lot of challenges for Canada. What types of strategies do you think financial service organizations need to adopt to balance this compliance, innovation, and now competitiveness is more than ever a real issue.
Don, I think it's going to be, I think we're in for a period of retrenchment. I mean, innovation is, I mean, we've seen this for a little while, but gone are the days of innovative technologies and products for their own sake. It's all about capital conservation. Interest rates have risen. There's increased competition, higher barriers to trade nationally, internationally, especially internationally, of course. And I think financial institutions and financial services providers need to focus on their what they can deliver as efficiently as possible. There's very little appetite in uncertain times for the untested. So novel solutions are likely to get a short hearing from budget constrained buyers. It's just the reality we live in right now.